and how they can use it to optimize their performance, energy, and body composition, but most importantly, health. Because if we're using nutrition to optimize health, then ultimately the rest is going to follow. You're muted, Marty.
Yep, that's me. Good.
You hear me all right?
Yeah, 100%. Right, so we'll get stuck in here. What I'm going to do, folks, I'm just going to work through a couple of questions that I've had sent to me first. They'll be relevant to everyone. You'll take a lot away from them, don't worry about that. And then we'll just pass it over to you. You can just ask whatever questions that are most relevant to you, right? So, Floyd, the first one I want to ask you is, what needs to be combined together to make a weight loss journey as easy as it could possibly be?
So when it comes to setting up your nutrition strategy, the most important thing is going to be sustainability. So having a nutrition strategy which is going to be sustainable. And I always say, if you can't see yourself on that same diet 6 months down the line or even 6 years down the line, then you need to rethink your nutrition strategy. It needs to be sustainable first and foremost. So whether that's low carb, intermittent fasting, paleo diet, so whatever diet that you plan on undertaking in your fat loss journey, if you feel that you can stick to that, then that's going to be the best approach. But it's important to remember that all these diets kind of work by doing the same thing, and that's creating a calorie deficit. Now, once you have a nutrition strategy which is going to be sustainable, then obviously you need to create a calorie deficit, because that's what's going to result in fat loss. And for those who don't know, calorie deficit is just basically eating less calories than what you expend on a daily basis. Now, you can do one or two things to create a calorie deficit: either reduce your energy intake or increase your energy expenditure. But the best approach is going to be doing both. And when it comes to the energy intake side of things, it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to decrease your calories by 500 calories per day, as opposed to trying to burn it through exercise, because to burn 500 calories through exercise is going to require you to train pretty intensely. But doing both basically is going to be the best strategy to help create that calorie deficit. Now, when it comes to both sides of the equation, it has to be enjoyable. So if you start with energy expenditure, for example, and the calories going out, you have to be doing activities that you enjoy and you can sustain. See, if you start to look towards exercise or certain activities and dreading it, then you're not going to be able to sustain it. It needs to be enjoyable. So obviously going to the gym with Marty, Sean and Gary, it's going to be enjoyable. It's going to be good crack. So you're going to like it, and it's going to be more sustainable. Then on the energy intake side of things, it's the exact same. You need to be eating foods that you enjoy, as opposed to being too restrictive. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. They don't include their favorite foods in their nutrition strategy because they think they need to be restrictive. And that's why people end up kind of blowing back up. And I think I said before on the first webinar is that when it comes to weight loss, what the stats show is that within 3 years, out of everyone who diets, 95% of those people put the weight back on. And the reason being is because people are too restrictive. They try too much too soon. So see, when it comes to your calories and having a nutrition strategy, always try and incorporate the foods that you like and you enjoy on a daily basis. Because see, when it comes to the weekend, you'll not feel the urge to binge or go off track. Like, for example, I'm still going through Easter eggs because I'm taking wee bits at a time. I don't feel the need to eat an Easter egg all at once or eat all the chocolate at once, because I incorporate it into my nutrition every single day. Because you can still eat whatever you want on a nutrition strategy and still achieve your goals, but you just can't eat how much of it as you want. So making sure you're doing activities and exercises that you enjoy. When it comes to your energy intake side of things, making sure it's food, that you're eating food that you enjoy and you like. There's no, nutrition doesn't need to be bland, doesn't need to be boring. And in my opinion, try and increase your nutrition knowledge as well in the process as much as possible. I think if you're trying to increase your nutrition knowledge, you're going to value nutrition more, and you'll appreciate it and see that it's a lot more than just losing or gaining weight. You can use nutrition to fuel your body, to help with energy, to help with performance in the gym, to help with sleep. And you need to think about it as a lifestyle change as well. That's going to be important to make sure that it's going to be easy and sustainable. If you start to see a nutrition strategy as an 8 or 10 week thing, then that's just going to set you up for failure. Like, for example, everyone on this call, wouldn't like to think people are on this call and join the gym because they want to get in shape in 8 weeks and then just give up again. I'm hoping that everyone's join the gym and on this call because they kind of want to make a lifestyle change. And that's key going forward. It needs to be long-term as opposed to quick fixes. And it's a case of not trying too much too soon as well. I think that's important. Just work on 1 to 2 things at a time and then gradually build on that each and every single week and make it a lifestyle. And if you trial all those things and take all those things into consideration, the weight loss journey or weight gain, whatever it is going to be more enjoyable for you, and it's going to be more sustainable.
It is. So if you were just to summarize that, for everyone, just we would have put it in the key bullet points. We'll just get into the habit of doing this at the end of every question, just in case anyone gets lost in the question.
Yeah. So sustainability is going to be the main one. Have a nutrition strategy which is going to be sustainable. When it comes to creating the calorie deficit, like I said, you can do one or two things: decrease your energy intake or increase your expenditure. But doing both is your best bet. When it comes to exercise, you want it to be enjoyable. When it comes to the food that you intake, you want to make sure that's enjoyable and it's not boring. And play the long game. Don't think about it as a quick fix. Think about it as a bit of a lifestyle change. And don't try and overhaul your diet all at once. Work on 1 to 2 things at a time and then build on it each and every single week.
Okay, dead on. And see, just off that as well, so there are probably some people on here going, what's he talking about when he's saying decrease intake and increase energy expenditure? So could you just explain that?
Yeah, so when it comes to the weight loss, and I'm sure some of you know and some of you may not know, that you need to create a calorie deficit. So you need to eat less calories than what you burn. So there's two sides of the equation: the calories going in, which is just the calories that come from food and drink, and then the calories going out, which can come from a number of things. So it can come mainly from your resting metabolic rate, which is just the amount of calories you would burn if you lay in bed all day, just to support basic bodily functions. And then also your activity levels as well. So what you do in the gym and then what you do outside of the gym. So there's kind of two sides of the equation. So when it comes to weight loss, to eat less calories than what you burn, you can do one or two things. You can decrease the amount of calories you consume on a daily basis, or you can focus on increasing your expenditure through your activity levels. But like I said, in my opinion, doing both is going to be the best bet.
Happy days. And that actually leads perfect into my next question. So how important now, because we get this all the time, particularly people on like a weight loss journey, for example, and then they just sort of like stagnate. And then you sort of look at the activity levels outside the gym, and we know there's a wee bit more room for improvement.
Yeah.
So how important is your activity levels outside the gym when it comes to weight loss?
Yeah, it's probably the most important aspect of your weight loss journey and your fat loss journey. I mean, I'll get people come to me all the time and they'll say they're training 5-6 days a week for 8 weeks and their nutrition's on point and they're not changing. But when you look at what they do outside of the gym, they might have a desk job, they're sitting 9 to 5, they're going training for an hour, maybe going balls to the wall, but then when they come home, they're sitting again and they're not doing much. So over the course of the day, their activity levels actually aren't that high. And it's what you do outside of the gym that you're going to see the biggest impact, just increasing your activity levels as much as possible. And people tend to overestimate as well how much calories they burn in the gym. And it doesn't help with that. A lot of these Fitbits and Apple Watches, they can overestimate by 90%. So a lot of the times, if it's saying that you burned 1,000 calories in an hour session, you more than likely burned a lot less than that. And then people also make the mistake of thinking they can eat those calories back. But when it comes to your activity levels as well outside of the gym, it's going to be a lot more sustainable just trying to move more as opposed to trying to go balls to the wall every single day to burn as much calories as possible. If you focus on what you can do outside of the gym, walk where you can, walk to the shop, walk to the gym, you can really increase the amount of calories you burn over the course of a day. And there's been a few studies that have looked into how much calories you can actually burn from walking. And if you walk 3 miles per hour, let's say, which is a brisk walk for 1 hour, you can burn around 300 calories. So that could be the difference between going to walk to the gym for half an hour and then half an hour back. And over the course of the day, and over the course of the week, that can significantly increase the amount of calories you burn on a daily basis. And in terms of body composition, there was actually a study done. It was back in 1999, and they got 16 people basically, and they found out their maintenance calories, so how much calories they need to stay the same weight. And then what they'd done is they overfed them by 1,000 calories. So they give them 1,000 calories more than what they need. And anyone who overeats by 1,000 calories is obviously going to put on weight. And they've done this over an 8-week period. But what the showed is that some people actually only gained 0.4 kilos of body fat over 8 weeks, despite overeating by 1,000 calories. But others gained 5 kilos of fat, which is understandable. But see, when you look into the activity levels of those people who didn't gain much fat, they were also the ones who went out walks and actually increased their activity levels. So because they were so active and over the course of the day and increasing their calorie expenditure, so how much calories they burn on a daily basis, they were able to get away with overeating by 1,000 calories. So basically, the more active you are, the more food you can get away with. And that's why it's important that when it comes to being in a calorie deficit, you want to decrease your food slightly, but also try and increase your expenditure, because that's going to help create a deficit. So in short, basically your activity levels outside of the gym is going to be one of the most important aspects of your fat loss journey.
Dead on. So realistically, then it is just because I know there would be a lot of people that train, probably some people on here. They would just be like, it's just all them wee small things that people might overlook and go. Could everyone just mute themselves there? Sorry, please. Just mute yourselves there on the bottom left, the wee microphone, please. So it's just probably all the wee small things that people might overlook and go, I'm not doing that. That's not gonna help me in any way. So it's like wee small things, probably like parking further away from the gym, taking the stairs, like you said, half an hour walk to the gym, maybe a half an hour back. They're going to be massive then, really, for your weight loss journey.
100%, and they're going to be a lot more sustainable. It's easy to just to get out and move more and walk more, as opposed to focusing on going to the gym and trying to burn as much calories as possible. Why not just focus on going out for walks? Because they're low intensity activities. They're going to be more sustainable, and for a lot of people, they're going to be more enjoyable. So it's just about moving more, making a conscious effort to maybe you get people that'll drive to the gym and then get on a treadmill instead of either just running to the gym or even walking to the gym, walking to the shop where they can, or like you said, parking further away from work or further away from the gym, because over time, all that'll add up.
Okay. And this actually isn't noted down, but I want to ask this myself. So when you say obviously your activity levels outside the gym, and then people getting into the gym and going balls to the walls, I constantly hear people saying like, I didn't sweat in that session, or you don't sweat much in them sessions. You don't. Like, people are off this idea you need to come into the gym and leave it absolutely soaking wet in order to be getting somewhere. So particularly when it comes to like strength training, a lot of it's maybe at a fucking slow pace. So you're just lifting a couple of weights here and there, and then you're taking a break, things like that. What would you say to people that, think, oh, fuck, I need to be leaving here soaking wet?
No, we'll see. Again, that just goes back to kind of what I touched on about people thinking that they need to go balls to the wall. And I've just highlighted how much calories you can burn by walking 3 miles per hour, which is a brisk walk for 1 hour. You can burn 300 calories on average. So going to the gym, you're going to burn calories regardless. But see, when it comes to strength training and the long-term benefits you're going to get, not just for body composition, overall health. Do you know what I mean? Improving muscle mass, reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease, certain illnesses, improving blood pressure, improving cholesterol. All those are going to be a lot more important than just losing weight, and people tend to undervalue them. But as well, when you exercise, that after the gym, you can continue to burn calories after a session, because it's going to take a while for your body as well to get back down to baseline, because it's still working to get back down, to get the heart rate back down. So you can also burn a lot of calories after that gym session as well. So it's not just a case of what you do in that session. And then as well, if someone wants to go in and go balls to the wall and leave the gym covered in sweat, I mean, they're not going to last the crack more than likely, because they're going to burn out. It's going to lead to overtraining, and then they can forget about their fat loss journey or trying to gain muscle, because after a couple of weeks, they're going to start dreading the gym. They're going to see it as a bit of a burden, and they're going to want to continue. So going to the gym, in my opinion, is about making it enjoyable first and foremost, and then use your qualified personal trainers. You know exactly what you're doing with regards to the exercises. But in terms of the benefits you're going to get, it goes beyond just fat loss. I mean, the benefits, like I said, with regards to reducing the risk of certain illnesses and diseases, are you're going to take with you for the rest of your life. So basically, in short, I wouldn't worry about going in and going balls to the wall each session, because the benefits you get from an hour session of just doing something, whether it's low intensity, the fact that you're getting under a bar, you're lifting weights, like I said, the benefits are going to be with you long after that gym session.
Happy days, brilliant. So next question, we'll start getting into our macronutrients here. So how important is protein in your diet when it comes to weight loss?
Yeah, so protein, basically, main role is to help build muscle and also to help repair your muscles. And basically, when it comes to your weight loss journey, when you're in a calorie deficit, so eating less calories than what you burn on a daily basis, you want to be making sure a lot of the majority of that weight is coming from fat. Now, some's going to come from muscle mass just because the nature of losing weight. It's called catabolic, which basically means breaking down. So your body's breaking down things, but you don't want it to be breaking down muscle. You want it to be breaking down fat, basically, and losing fat. Now, there's two main things you can do to make sure you're holding on to as much muscle mass as possible whilst reducing body fat, and that's weight training. Hands down, it's going to be the most important thing. What you do in the gym, but protein intake is going to be the next most important thing. And that's why hitting your total daily protein intake is essential, because it'll help preserve as much muscle mass as possible. And not only that, protein has a high satiety rate. which just basically means it keeps you fuller for longer. So you're less likely to overeat. So for those in a calorie deficit and wanting to cut back a bit, it's going to be beneficial to consume more protein in the diet. So obviously to preserve muscle mass, hold on to it, make you fuller for longer. And also protein has what's called a high thermic effect. So when you eat protein, you actually burn off more calories just eating and digesting it compared to eating carbs and fats. So that can actually help increase the amount of calories you burn over the course of the day. So when it comes to fat loss, we all talk about calories, which are obviously going to be really, really important and hands down the most important thing. But the next food group, which is going to be the next most important thing, is going to be protein. To hold on to that muscle, make sure you're losing as much body fat as possible, have a high satiety, keep you fuller for longer, and then actually help you burn more calories over the course of the day because it's difficult to digest. So protein is going to be really, really important when it comes to your fat loss journey. And just on that, with regards to holding on to muscle, a lot of people do fear muscle and they don't want to be bulky or they don't want to gain muscle. But muscle is not only going to be important just for looks, it's going to be important for your performance in the gym, but most importantly, your overall health. Because basically, when you eat carbs, right, it's broken down into sugar, and that sugar goes into the bloodstream. And no one wants high amounts of sugar in the bloodstream because that's what can result in things like diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So people have high sugar levels. You basically want somewhere for that sugar to go, and the muscle just happens to be like the sink, so it's storage site for sugar. So if we have big muscles, then there's more room for that sugar to go into and get rid of. Whereas if we have small muscles, because we're not weight training or consuming protein, that means there's no room for that sugar to go, and it's left in the bloodstream in high amounts, and that's when we can run into problems with our health, like result in diabetes and also cardiovascular disease. So that's the benefits of consuming more protein as well in terms of muscle mass, health, and also performance, not just for looks.
Happy days. And just on protein as well, suppose the main thing, the main sort of feedback you get if we sort of break down someone's calories, give them their protein intake, would be the struggle to hit their protein, the struggle to hit their target and their goal. So what tips would you give to someone, who's in that situation, regardless whether they're on 100, 120, 150, 170? Like what tips would you give them to make that easier?
I mean, when it comes to your protein intake, you always want to be consuming it through a food first approach. So that could be fish, eggs, chicken, other meats. But nowadays, it's becoming more easier, in my opinion, and working with clients, it's becoming more easier to hit protein intake because there's a lot of yogurts out there that have a lot of protein in it. I mean, you've got ones called Scar, Kvarg yogurt, Arla, and they've all got around 20 grams of protein, and they've got very little calories, about 100 calories. So you could easily have two of those, which is 200 calorie snack, and you've got 40 grams of protein there in between meals. Also, don't be afraid to use things like protein bars as well. I mean, depending on the protein that's within it, but a lot of them are going to contain proteins that are going to contribute anyway to your overall protein intake. And then also protein shakes. So protein shake, like I said, you want to be getting your protein through a food first approach, but that's where protein shakes are why they're there. They're there for convenience and for those who struggle to hit their protein intake. For example, if I'm short of my protein intake by the end of the day, and let's say I don't have any protein yogurts, well, that's where a scoop of protein can come into it. That it gives you around 25 grams of protein. And also, if you're really short, don't be afraid to double up on your protein. 2 scoops is going to be about 40, 50 grams of protein. So a lot of people shouldn't really have a problem hitting their protein intake. Now, protein is expressed relative to someone's body weight. So you hear these recommendations of 2 grams per kg of body weight. So that would mean 2 grams of protein for every kilo that you weigh. So for someone who's 50 kilo, you multiply it by 2 and that's 100 grams. I mean, that's pretty easy to hit through food alone. But work becomes difficult if someone's, let's say, 100 kg and that 2 grams per kg is 200 grams. But again, those people can use supplements and add protein supplements into their nutrition strategy to help increase their protein intake. But nowadays, with the likes of protein yogurts and these low calorie, high protein snacks, in my opinion, and working with a lot of clients, it shouldn't really be a problem hitting your protein intake. You can't just have to go out and actually try, and a lot of it comes down to planning your day as well. And what you see as well from the research, typical patterns of protein is that people consume very little at breakfast, a good bit at lunch, and then the majority at dinner. That's what the general public kind of have a skewed distribution of protein. But if you can make a conscious effort of trying to get a decent amount of protein with every meal and snack, it means you're not chasing it towards the end of the day. And I always recommend that every time you're sitting down or having a meal or snack, ask yourself, does it contain a source of protein, whether it's eggs, like I said, chicken, fish, protein yogurts, or even a protein shake? And those wee strategies will help you increase or gradually increase your protein intake over the course of the day and over the course of the weeks on your fat loss journey.
Happy days. Just on protein as well. So when it comes to tracking, how important? So obviously people will come on, will start, they may change their diet, and then they have that protein goal, they're trying to hit it and they can't get it. So it's really trial and error, obviously, for the first, say, week or so, 2 weeks, whatever, until they start nailing it down. How important is tracking on the likes of MyFitnessPal? You know, them like say MyFitnessPal basically. How important is tracking when it comes to like your protein intake to start nailing it down and getting the hang of it, hitting your target?
When it comes to even in tracking in general, well, if you're not tracking, it's just guesswork, because like I said, you need to know how much calories. If you have a calorie target, there's no way that you're really going to know how much calories you're consuming without trying to track it. Even with tracking, you're not going to be 100% accurate, but you're going to have a good shot at it without guessing. I mean, it's just impossible to know without tracking. So it's going to give you a good idea of where you're at and where you're going wrong. And what I do as well, when people start my program, for example, the first 3 days, I get them to log their food and I tell them not to change anything at all. So just stick to what you normally eat and log your food. And this is called a 3-day food diary. And people are shocked when I give them the results back and say, this is what you're consuming over a 3-day period. Because a lot of people think that they're in a calorie deficit, but when they actually track their calories, they're consuming a lot more than what they think. So that's a number one reason why, because it's going to help you become more aware. And in my opinion, tracking calories is the best way to increase your nutrition knowledge as well. Because if you're getting in the routine of, let's say, weighing or logging chicken or logging yogurt over time, you're going to have a good idea of the protein content of that specific food. And when it comes to your fat loss goals or your protein target, when you're on the go, because you're more aware, you know exactly what protein sources you need to go to help hit your target. So the number one most important reason, hands down, is that track is because it's guesswork. If not, if you really want to get serious about losing weight or even gaining weight, in my opinion, you have to track for a period of time. Now, you don't need to track all your life. No one wants to track when they're 70 or 80. But what it'll do is it'll provide you with the skills needed to kind of, after you've been in a period of, let's say, a calorie deficit, and you want to continue to be in a calorie deficit, let's say after 12 weeks, if you've been tracking consistently for 12 weeks and you've been logging 50 grams of rice, you've been logging 170 grams of chicken, well, you're not going to need to weigh that food going forward, because you've weighed it so much, you kind of become more aware. And this is kind of called intuitive eating. You kind of know what the calorie and protein content is of specific foods. And then you can also rely on your hunger as well and satiety. You kind of know when you've overate and when you're full after a period of tracking, let's say 2,000 calories for 12 weeks. But in my opinion, starting off, it is essential to track it, because like I said, it's guesswork if not, and it's going to increase your nutrition knowledge and help you become more aware of the calorie and macronutrient content of specific foods. So macronutrients would just be protein, carbs, and fats.
Happy days. So I know you touched on carbs there briefly when we were talking about the protein. When it comes to carbs and the calorie intake, you know yourself, a lot of people are shit scared of carbs. They're afraid of carbs. So what would you say to people who have that, you know, basically that ideology that they're afraid of carbs?
Yeah. So see, when it comes to carbs, I always describe it as carbs to your body is like fuel to a car. So essentially, the more you put in, the further you can go. So it's going to be your main fuel source you use during high intensity activity. So if you're going for an exercise or weight training session that's high intensity, if you're going for a run that's high intensity, anything you do that's high intensity, you're using carbs. So if you're cutting back on carbs and the fear that it's going to lead to weight gain, let's say, then that's going to impair your performance in the gym and in training, and it's not providing your body with the fuel needed to function and to provide you with energy. So you need to, again, comes down to increasing your nutrition knowledge as well and become more aware of foods as well, and that it's a lot more than just losing or gaining weight. Certain foods can benefit your performance and benefit your energy throughout the day, and carbs are going to be one of those. When it comes to fat loss, I've touched on it before, calories are going to be the most important thing, being in a calorie deficit and then hitting your protein intake. And then carbs' main role is to help you get the most out of the sessions that you're going in and doing with the lads, because it's going to help you perform. If, let's say, you have a clone of yourself, let's say there's two of me, and one goes into a training session with no carbs and the other goes in that they had a high carb meal beforehand, you guarantee that the person who's going in with a high carb meal beforehand is going to get the most out of that session and be able to perform optimally and be able to get out an extra set, an extra rep in the gym. And over time, that can result in you increasing more muscle mass or increasing your fitness over a period of weeks and months. So carbs, when it comes to performance, are going to be king. So you do not want to be fearing them. And it probably comes from carbs leads to weight gain, because carbs can hold on to water. So for every gram of carb you eat, it can actually hold on to 3 grams of water. So sometimes when people increase their carbohydrate intake, that can increase their scale weight, but it's just water weight. That's why a lot of people kind of fear it. But coming from me, carbs are going to be king when it comes to sport and performance. Like I said, they're your main fuel source that you're going to be using during those gym sessions.
Dead on. And just on carbs as well there, because I know fiber is very important as well, and you can touch on that briefly here. When it does come to carbs, would you recommend any type in particular?
Well, when it comes to carbs, there's basically 2 main types, right? Now, to simplify it, there's terms for it, but to simplify it, there's called fast release and there's called slow release. So fast release is carbs that give you a quick release of energy. So that would be like sweets, Lucozade Sport. So you think of like sugary products, but then you've got slow release, and these type of carbs give you a slow release of energy over the course of the day. And these are the carbs that are lower in sugar but higher than fiber. So think of things like, so fast release would be like your sugar, your sweets, Lucozade, but also things like white bread, white pasta. And then when you've got slow release, that would be the whole grain or whole wheat versions of those. So brown pasta, brown rice, sweet potato, and also a lot of fruit and veg. They're the types of carbs that you want to be consuming. The majority of your diet, the majority of your carbs should be made up of these foods, because they're going to be high in fiber, and fiber is going to be really important for gut health. It's going to be really important for overall health by reducing cholesterol and improving your blood pressure as well. Now, there is a time and a place for fast release, and like Sean, for example, will know this, because when it comes to for example, him training and he's doing a long session and you need to take on some carbs during a session, if you're exercising for, let's say, 90 minutes, well, you want something that's going to give you a fast release of energy, and that's where the Lucozade Sport or sweets come into it. But outside of that, the majority of your carbohydrate intake should consist of what you call slow release. So brown bread, brown pasta, sweet potato, and a lot of fruit and veg, because like I said, they're going to be high in fiber, and fiber is going to be important for gut health and also overall health.
Happy days, sweet. So we touched on carbs. There are people being afraid of carbs, obviously, for weight loss, and then sort of staying on that whole sort of track of people obviously being afraid of the likes of carbs, etc. And then seeing people could sort of be really, placing themselves in that extreme calorie deficit, because they're not only afraid of carbs, but they're afraid to eat.
Yeah.
So they're seriously restricting the amount of food that they're eating. It's this case of maybe 1,200, 1,000 calories, 800 calories. So what is the consequences of low calorie deficits, and why?
Yeah, so basically when it comes to the low calorie deficits and being on low calorie diets, it can impact performance, but it can also impact our overall health, because basically when it comes to our energy expenditure, so how much calories we burn over the course of the day, it's made up of 4 main things. So it's made up of your resting metabolic rate, so the amount of calories you burn if you lay in bed all day, so the amount of calories you require just to carry out basic bodily functions. And for me, that's about 1,800 calories just if I lay in bed all day. Then you've got your activity in the gym, your activity outside of the gym, and then you actually burn calories as well, just eating and digesting food. But basically, if we think about our resting metabolic rate, so the resting metabolic rate, like I said, is how much calories you burn if you lay in bed all day. So for me, it's 1,800 calories. That's how much my body needs just to function. So let's say I went below that on a 1,500 calorie diet or a 1,400 calorie diet. Basically, that means that I'm not even providing my body with enough calories to support basic bodily functions. And what will happen then is those bodily functions will become compromised. So for anyone who's on really low calorie diets, like 1,200, for example, 1,300, what your body will do, because it doesn't like to be in a deficit, it'll say, right, if we're not getting the calories here from food to support these bodily functions, well, we will then need to look to these bodily functions and strip energy back. And these bodily functions include things like bone health. So your body will say, right, we're not getting enough calories here. Let's stop putting so much calories towards supporting bone health. And that's how your bones can become compromised. You're more susceptible to breaks. It'll do the exact same for your immune system. So say we're on low calories here, we're not getting enough. Let's stop putting so much energy towards supporting our immune system. And that's when your immune system can become compromised, then you're more susceptible to illnesses and infections. In females as well, what will happen, your body will say, let's stop putting so much energy towards menstrual function in the menstrual cycle because we need to hold on to calories here. And then that's how that process can become impaired. And then girls and women tend to lose their periods as a result of being on low calorie diets. So there's a whole host of negative consequences that come with it. I mean, performance obviously can become compromised, but most importantly, health. And that's what people kind of fail to take into consideration, that you're doing more harm than good on these low calorie diets.
Happy days. Right, so just sort of moving on from calories there, and that water. I want to touch on water. So, how important is water? Why is it so important, and how much would you recommend on a daily basis?
Right. So basically, when it comes to water, why it's important is, well, water is, our body's made up, the majority of water, around 60 to 70%. And water is the main constituent of our blood. And blood's important to carry nutrients to different cells and organs around the body. So it's essential for our health. Now, when we become dehydrated, there's a number of things that can become compromised. And one of them being our cognitive function. So that's usually the first thing to go. So our ability to think, keep concentration, alert, and make decisions. And that's not only important to consider for anyone who's going to the gym and needs to be alert and concentrated to get the most out of the session, but for the majority of jobs, they're going to require you to be concentrated and to be alert. So when we even become slightly dehydrated, that's usually the first thing to go. Now, if we become more dehydrated, what will happen is you'll get an increase in heart rate. And then as a result of that, you can get an increase in your core temperature. So you'll heat up more. And then as a result of that, it can increase your RP, which is your rate of perceived excursion. So in short, what this basically means is that if you're going into a training session dehydrated, increase in heart rate, increase in core temperature, it means that exercise or workout is going to seem a lot more difficult than what it should. So if you're hydrated, you can keep control of your heart rate, you keep control of your core temperature, and you can get the most out of the session. It won't seem as difficult. Now, as a result of that, that can result in fatigue. So fatigue can set in, you won't be able to get the most out of your session, and it can result in a decrease in strength and also a decrease in your overall fitness. So it has a negative impact on your health and also a negative impact on your performance. Now, in terms of recommendations, it's going to come down to a number of things. So it's going to come down to how active someone is over the course of the day. It's going to come down to how intense they're exercising for, how long they're exercising for, the humidity, the weather, so loads. But basically, in short, the recommendations are, take your body weight and multiply it by 35, and that's roughly how much water you should be consuming over the course of the day. So 35 mil multiplied by your body weight. So let's say you're 100 kg, take 35 multiplied by 100 kg. So that would be 3,500 mils, which is 3.5 liters. So that's going to be a kind of good starting point. And you want to be making sure as well that you're well hydrated going into training, during training, and then after training. And when it becomes to these consequences that I talked about, so impairing your ability to keep concentrated, alert, decrease strength, decrease fitness, they happen when you lose more than 2% of your body weight during training. So let's say you're 100 kg again, just for talk's sake. If you lose more than 2 kilos during your session, that's when you can run into problems. So you want to be making sure that you're not losing that much. Now, people say, well, how do I know? Well, what you can do is just weigh yourself before and weigh yourself after. And let's say you're 100 kg before the session, and then you're 99 kg after. Well, that means you've lost a litre of fluid, because a kilo is equivalent to a litre. And then you can work it out, is that more than 2%? It's what I do with Sean, for example. He'll weigh himself before and after training. I'll find out how much roughly has he lost. Is it more than 2%? And if it is, I know then I need to take action and make sure that he's either consuming more fluid before and during, to make sure those consequences don't arise, like cognitive ability, strength, and also fitness. So water is going to be, and keeping hydrated is going to be really important for your overall health, functioning day to day, and also during your workout. And what's important to remember, that it's not just water that you need to keep hydrated. I mean, teas, coffees, other drinks contribute to your hydration levels. So they can all be included in whatever the recommendations is for you. So like I said, 35 mils multiplied by your body weight, and that's roughly a good starting point. But the best indication as to whether you're hydrated or not is going to be monitor your urine color. So the paler your urine color is, it's a good indication that you're hydrated. The darker your urine color is, then it's a good indication that you're dehydrated.
It is. Good. So I'm going to move on to calorie banking, because I know this will benefit a lot of people on here. So we'll just touch on calorie banking, what it is, and then I'll go into a wee bit more after banking on days where resting and days where training. So touch on
Yeah,
calorie
so
banking, what it is, and then yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no worries. Well, so when you set up your nutrition strategy and you have an idea of how much calories you need, you can kind of, as opposed to seeing it as a daily intake, see it as a weekly intake. So it's kind of like your weekly budget. So let's say your calorie intake was 2,000 calories. You don't need to consume 2,000 calories every single day of the week. Let's say if you want to go out at the weekend and you might want to have a takeaway or account for a few beers, you want to factor it in the healthy lifestyle. What you can do then is go Monday to Friday, have 1,800 calories. So you're reducing your calorie intake by 200 calories Monday to Friday. And that basically means you bank 1,000 calories for that weekend to allow you for some flexibility. So that's kind of what calorie banking is banking the calories for a day you plan to eat more food. So think about your calorie intake as a weekly budget as opposed to a daily. And it's the same if you go over one day, you can kind of go on to the next, because over the course of the week is what matters most, as opposed to focusing on your daily intake. A lot of people think because they were over their intake one day that they failed and they fucked up their fat loss journey or whatever it may be. But it's kind of over the course of a week, which is going to be the most important thing.
Sweet. And when it comes to calorie banking again, how would you do it on days you're training, days you're not training? What way would you work out?
Yeah, so no 2 days are obviously going to be the same because people aren't going to be training every single day of the week and have the exact same activity levels every single day of the week. So on days that are more demanding than others, always have in your head. So when you're starting your week and you look at the 7 days that are ahead, you kind of know what days are going to be more demanding than others. So you're going to maybe train once that day, twice that day, have a rest day another day. And on those days that you're going to be doing more and exercising more, that's going to require you to increase your calorie intake to help fuel the demands of that day. Because like we said, consequences of low calorie diets, not only on our health, but also performance. And we want to be making sure we're well fueled going into those sessions and those days that are more demanding. Now, when it comes to increasing those calories, you want to be predominantly increasing them from carbs, because we touched on carbs' role in optimizing sport and performance and recovery. So carbs are going to be king, and the increase in calories can't come from carbs. But then when you look at rest days, you're not going to be as active, you're not going to be doing as much, so you don't need as much calories. So when you are reducing your calories slightly on that day, you want to be reducing them from carbs, because like I said, carbs' main role is to fuel moderate to high intensity exercise and provide us with fuel. But on rest days, when you're not as active, there's no real need for carbs. So if there's one food group we can look to reduce, it's your carbohydrate intake. And that's going to make sure your kind of body composition and your fat loss goals are kind of in check, because those days that are more demanding than others, you're going to increase your calories, but as a way to compensate, you can reduce on those rest days.
Brilliant. So obviously you were just talking there, averaging things out on a weekly basis, rather than sort of day to day, and that just made me remember about the scale weight. So a lot of people are fixated on scale weight, basically day to day. You know what I mean? So they're
Yeah.
hopping on them every day. What would you say to these people, and what would you recommend to do?
Yeah, I deal with it every single day. So I'll get my clients to weigh themselves every day. Now, it's important to remember first and foremost that weighing yourself isn't the only way to assess progress. I mean, progress photos are going to be the best way, hands down, because photos don't lie. Measurements as well, going off how you feel, how you look, your energy throughout the day, your sleep, your mood. So all those are going to be much better ways to assess progress. But if you are using scale weight to assess progress, it's important that you do it the right way. A lot of people will jump on the scale and let's say they're 70 kg on a Monday, they'll be 69 the next, 68 the next day, and then they'll be back up to 70, and they'll think that they haven't lost any weight. And it's just, that's the problem as well when people weigh themselves once a week, because someone can weigh themselves on a Monday and be 70 kilo, and then the next Monday they can be 70 kg and they think that they haven't lost any weight. but they might have lost weight during the week. So that's why you need to weigh yourself every single day. Now, it's important to remember that, like I said, the weight's going to fluctuate day to day. It's going to be up, it's going to be down, because there's so much things that can affect it. Like carbs, I said at the start, holds on to water. That can affect it if you consume more carbs one day. A late dinner, if you consume more fluid, because remember, a litre of fluid is equivalent to a kilo. Also, muscle soreness can result in water retention, lack of sleep. So there's loads of things that can affect it. So as a way to account for those daily fluctuations, what the best approach is take your weight over the course of 7 days. So when you get up in the morning, go to the toilet before you eat, weigh yourself, and do that for 7 days, and then take the average. And then that's classified as weight 1. Then the next 7 days, you can weigh yourself every day for 7 days, take the average, and then it's classified as weight 2. And then compare weight 1 to weight 2 and see has it went down. And then it's going to give you a good indication as to where you're at. Don't get too caught up on what your weight is daily. Focus on the average. Like I think I was saying to Marty, it feels like I've been at 72 kg for the past 3-4 weeks. But when I'm taking the averages, I'm going down slowly but surely each week, because it's so hard, because you're looking at the number on the scale. Like even Sean probably noticed that when you're standing and looking at that number on the scale every single day, it can feel like you're not really losing any weight. But on my end as a nutritionist, and what you need to take into consideration is the weekly averages, and that's going to give you a good indication as to where you're at. But it just reverts back to what I said at the start. The most important thing when it comes to assessing progress is going off what you see in the mirror. I mean, I've got a picture of Sean on my Instagram, and it's from one of his first fights, and he's 63 kg, and a photo from his recent fight, one of his recent fights, at 63 kg, exact same weight, and he's had a lot more muscle mass, and he's a lot more shredded, because you can actually build muscle and lose fat at the same time. It can be pretty difficult, but it can be done. So that's why you don't want to get too caught up on scale weight, because Sean's the exact same weight in the second picture. He looks a lot heavier. But in short, when it comes to weighing yourself, focus on the weekly average as opposed to getting caught up on those daily fluctuations.
Happy days. And just as well on scale weight. So what would you say to people who'd say, look, listen, I've been doing everything. I've been sticking to the calories. I've been out walking. I've been flat out training, and I'm just not dropping at all.
Yeah, well, see, when it comes to, when you look at like the research, the number one reason why people don't lose weight or their weight loss stalls is because they're not actually 100% compliant with their diet. They're not actually sticking to it. So I'll get it all the time as well, that people say that I'm sticking to my calories and I'm not losing any weight. And when you look at the research, that it shows that people underreport by 40%. So if someone's saying they're eating 2,000 calories, there's a good chance you're eating a lot more than that. And they've actually even done a study on nutritionists and seen nutritionists underreport, because what people will not track and forget is those snacks in between. Those meals are nibbling at food when they're cooking, or even if you've got kids, nibbling at your kids' foods, or not accounting for cooking oils, sauces. And also people tend to forget as well that the weekends count too. A lot of people will track Monday to Friday and then think because they're it's the weekend they don't need to track, when really that's probably enough. They consume enough calories to take them out of a calorie deficit. And so that's on that end. Make sure you're tracking as accurately as possible, and also don't estimate portion sizes. If you're really serious, you want to be weighing the food that give you a good indication as to how much you are actually eating, as opposed to estimating, because that could be the difference between a couple hundred calories most days and over a period of a couple of weeks. That can add up. So on that side of things, ask yourself, am I tracking as accurately as possible? Second thing as well comes back to the weight, the weekly averages. When people get caught up on those daily fluctuations and think that they haven't lost any weight, but see, when they focus on the weekly averages, they actually have lost weight. And sometimes that's a big shock for people when they do the weekly averages. They realize, look, fuck, I am losing weight here. It just looks like my weight really hasn't changed, but it actually is going down slowly but surely. Also, progress photos. Have your progress photos changed in the past couple of weeks? Has your measurements changed in the last couple of weeks? So these are all important things to consider when people say, I haven't changed or my weight loss is stalled. Ask yourself, are you tracking accurately as possible? Are you weighing yourself doing the weekly averages? Are you looking at your progress photos, and are you taking measurements? Let's say you can say with confidence that you're doing all those 100%, and then they're still not losing weight. If that is possible if someone's been in a calorie deficit for a long period of time, because there's people there that lose weight in a calorie deficit and they've been losing weight, but they've been doing everything the same, and then all of a sudden they stall for a couple of weeks, and their activity levels are the same, they're training, They're maybe going to the gym the exact same sessions and they're consuming the exact same amount of calories. Well, why that happens is because your body can actually adapt over time. Because if you're not eating, your body doesn't like to be in a calorie deficit. It likes to be at energy balance. It likes to be eating the same amount as what you're expending. So if someone's reducing their energy intake, their calories, to lose weight, your body doesn't like that. So what it'll say is we need to get back here to the maintenance. So what we need to do is stop burning so much calories over the course of the day, and let's try and slow that down. And you may be going to the gym and doing your same sessions, but you'll not even realize it. But your activity levels outside of the gym will start to dip off. And this is just your body's way of reducing your calories. And you hear about it all the time. Bodybuilders, when it's leading into the bodybuilding shows and they look back at videos of themselves talking, they actually talk slower, they blink slower, they move their hands slower because your body's adapting, slowing down how much calories you burn. That's why it's important to keep a close eye on your step count and your activity levels outside of the gym to make sure that they don't dip off, make sure you continue to be as active as possible. But in the majority of cases, it's because the reason why weight loss stalls is because people aren't actually being 100% compliant with their diet.
Brilliant. So I'll just move on. That's everything that I had noted down that I wanted to cover and get across. I think people will take a lot away from that. I hope so anyway. Let us know. Just a couple of questions people have sent me. So let me see. Meals. Are you better eating small meals throughout the day or 3 main meals?
If this is in relation to the weight loss and fat loss, it doesn't really matter. I mean, calories are going to be the most important thing, making sure you hit your calorie target, whether you want to make that up from 3 meals or 5 meals. It's just going to be down to personal preference.
Happy days. Is there better foods to help aid recovery?
Again, it really just depends on what you're looking to recover from. But when it comes to the training session, I always like clients to think about the 3 hours of recovery. So you want to repair, and repair is protein. So you want to eat a good source of protein to help repair your muscles after a session. You want to replenish. So if you can remember, when we're exercising, we're using our fuel stores of carbs. So when we use that, we want to make sure we're refilling that fuel tank. So replenish with carbs and then rehydrate. So rehydrate with fluid, because coming back to the hydration question, we're sweating during exercise. We want to replace that to make sure that we're hydrated to optimize health and performance going into the next session. So when you think about your meal, repair with protein, replenish with some carbs, and then rehydrate with some fluid. And for anyone who doesn't know, protein can be like chicken, can be fish, can be eggs. Carbs can be bread, pasta, rice, and then rehydrate can be water, milk, Lucozade Sport, can be any drink that's going to contribute to your hydration level. So kind of cover those 3, and that can help promote recovery following a session.
Sweet. So having a cheat meal, is it a big deal if you do this once a week, if you're training hard 3 or 4 or 6 days a week, etc.?
Okay, this just comes back to probably the first question, talking about a sustainable approach. And I hate the term cheat meal because it implies that you're cheating on your diet, you're doing something bad on your diet. I mean, if you feel the need to cheat on your diet, then you need to rethink your nutrition strategy. I mean, like I said, you can eat anything you want on nutrition strategy. You just can't eat how much of it as you want. So you shouldn't feel the need to get to the weekend where you feel like you need to cheat and have a meal. If you want to have something, just have it during the week and account for it as best as you can. And if the person asking means that is a cheat meal going to be a big deal if you're training hard, again, it just comes down to calories. If you think about your calorie budget over the course of the week, if you're tracking and accounting for everything as best as possible and you're within your calories, then no, it's not going to have a big impact. I mean, like I said, you can have anything you want. You just can't have as much of it as you want. So if you are planning on having sweets, chocolate, takeaway, even alcohol, just track it as best you can, making sure you're within your weekly average.
Would you recommend making meals or purchase those healthy meals like Sean has, leans, super, just just in general, not just those ones, but just in general? So would you recommend cooking yourself basically, or get meals?
It just really depends. I mean, I know like the lads, the boxers get the meal prep companies because it takes away that burden of cooking. So it really just depends. If that's going to make your fat loss or your muscle gain, whatever journey you're on, if it's going to make it easier, then definitely. If it's going to prevent you from going into the garage and opting for unhealthier options, then yeah, definitely. I mean, they can be very convenient and useful, and have their place in your fat loss journey. Yeah.
Brilliant. Um, and let's see. So there was a picture sent here you can't see. So let's just say a pre-cooked meal, like a pre-cooked Tesco meal or just any sort of microwave meal. Are these good or should you avoid?
Again, it just really comes back to probably the meals and meal prep companies. I mean, they can be convenient and useful and have their place. And a lot of people do get caught up on like fresh, like fruit and veg, for example, or frozen products. But we know from the research that frozen is just as nutritious as fresh. When you think about it, when something's produced, the food's produced, it's frozen right away, so it can actually retain a lot of the nutrients and a lot of the vitamins and minerals. And we know that fresh, when it can be sitting on the shelf in the supermarket, for example, or sitting in your house at room temperature, that can actually result in the nutrient value decreasing over time. And not to get too technical, but it's mainly what's called water soluble vitamins, and this is vitamin C and B vitamins. For anyone who's unfamiliar, vitamin C is really important for your immune system, and it's really important for it's an antioxidant, so it can help you recover from exercise basically, and it's also important for iron absorption. I know iron's important to transport oxygen to the worker muscles. So basically, what happens if that's sitting on the shelf for a certain amount of time, that can result in the vitamin C and B vitamins decreasing. And I was showing that when you've got spinach, which is a good source of vitamin C, and vitamin C is essential to get in the diet, when that's sitting at room temperature for around 7 days, it can lose 100% of its vitamin C. So all of it, compared to when something's frozen, it can actually it loses some vitamin C, but it can hold on to the majority of it. So that's why frozen can just be as nutritious as fresh, because it can retain a lot of the vitamins and minerals and a lot of the nutrients. And that's why it's because these vitamin C's and B vitamins they're sensitive to the heat, they're sensitive to water, they're sensitive to light, and they're also sensitive to oxygen. So that's why when they're on the shelf in a supermarket, they're exposed to light, they're exposed to oxygen. So that's why they can degrade over time. And then if you think about cooking methods, so that's why cooking methods tend to degrade certain nutrients in foods, because if these vitamins are water soluble, it means they dissolve in water and they're sensitive to heat. So if you're boiling something, it's going to dissolve in the water. And if you have it on high heat and you burn something or you're cooking for too long, that can degrade the nutrient value as well. But basically, if you're looking to improve your health and your nutrition, and let's say you want to increase your fruit and veg consumption, I mean, I wouldn't get too caught up on whether a meal's frozen or fresh. I mean, the main thing is trying to increase your fruit and veg or increase your protein or whatever it is you're trying to do.
Brilliant. Happy days. So last one before we open it up here would be, I spoke about this maybe. So let's say someone has been in the gym training a couple of days a week, but then went back to a field sport, a couple of field sports outside the gym, and they've added maybe like say 4 to 6 extra sessions a week. They're in a calorie deficit, and they've obviously added they've upped the calories, obviously to help them maintain and perform, and then their weight has started to increase, even though the activity output outside the gym has went through the roof. What would you say why this is, and what would you say to someone like that?
Like, yeah, it comes back to why someone's not losing weight despite being in a calorie deficit, because if you're not losing weight, simple as you're not in a calorie deficit. That's bottom line. Now, with regards to the weight, again, is that person weighing himself once every now and again and going off those weights, or is he taking the weekly averages and comparing it week to week? Because again, people fail to take that into consideration. Also, if he's increasing his training, I touched on before that one thing that can cause water retention is muscle soreness. So usually when someone ups the training load and they have sore muscles, that can result in a bit of water retention, and the scale weight, the number on the scale is going up slightly. Are they consuming more carbs than usual, more fluid than usual? Because if someone's training more, they may be consuming more fluid, more carbs to fuel those sessions. And we know carbs hold on to water. Fluid can result in the scale weight going up. So there's a lot of things to consider, but there's something there, because someone's not losing weight, they're not in a calorie deficit. And also, how long is this person giving it? Like, is it a case of just going off it after a week or 2 weeks? I mean, I'll have people on my nutrition program and their weight might stall week to week. It's no big deal. You just continue on, don't make any adjustments, and then the weight starts coming off again. when it comes to your fat loss journeys, you do need to play the long game. There's so much factors that can affect the number you see on the scale. That's why you need to be patient with it. Patience is going to be the most important thing to consider. So if that person ever asks whether they're on the call or they want to listen back, take that into consideration. Are you weighing yourself, taking the averages? Was your muscle sore? Did you increase your carbs? Did you increase your fluid intake? And also, are you giving it long enough? Are you being patient?
Probably is, and I suppose not just athletes, that can come across for anyone who's in the gym, even the first week training again, muscle soreness, things like that. So that can just that's for everyone rather than just athletes, really, then, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. It applies to everyone. Yeah, not just athletes.
Brilliant. Right, well, listen, that's everything I've wanted to ask and all the questions that I've had sent to me asked. So suppose the next thing to really do is open it up to everyone who's on here. So does anyone have any questions they want to ask Floyd? How relevant it is to yourself or personal to yourself? Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
That's sorry, Marty. No, I thought I wasn't chatting properly. No, go ahead. I'm just listening, everybody. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. So, is anyone any questions? I know a few people says they were going to ask, but I don't know. Have we covered everything, or is there something we've missed? Come on, don't be afraid.
Probably did cover a lot early.
Seem to cover that, all right.
It's 1 hour of waffling.
Sleep, Floyd. A wee bit more on sleep, maybe. Lack of sleep for people.
Yeah, so I'll touch on sleep. So sleep is probably the most underutilized and recovery tool you've got at your disposal, and not even recovery, but especially in your fat loss and even muscle gain journey. And I would say you've got exercise, nutrition are seen as like the pillars of health, but sleep is the foundations on what those pillars are built on. So basically, if your sleep's impaired, then nutrition and training can become impaired. And we know that if you're not getting enough sleep, that can actually cause an increase in a hunger hormone called ghrelin. So you're more likely to overeat the next day. And not only are you more likely to overeat, but you're more likely to overeat on processed foods. We also know that not enough sleep can actually impair muscle building, and it can result in muscle breakdown, and it can also increase your risk of injury as well, and it can compromise your immune system, making you more susceptible to illnesses and infections. So sleep is going to be really, really important. It's recommended to get between around 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, and a few strategies would just be make sure your room is dark as possible. Try to avoid phones, iPads, laptops before bed, just because there's blue light that comes from it, and blue light can suppress your sleep hormone, which is called melatonin. And basically, when it's dark, you get an increase in this hormone, which helps us sleep. But if you're on your phone or exposed to light, that can suppress it, and it can be difficult to fall asleep. So and also try not to spend too much time in your room, because if you spend too much time in your room, like if anyone's working from home or sitting in their bedroom, your body can start to associate your room with wakefulness. So when you go to bed, it can be pretty difficult to fall asleep. So and then also avoid caffeine pre-bed, because caffeine can stay in your system for around 6 hours. It has a half-life of 6 hours, so basically means if you consume 200 milligrams of caffeine at 3 o'clock, 100 milligrams of that can still be in your system at 9, and that can impair sleep. So that's the importance of sleep and the recommendations, and then a few strategies to implement to help improve your sleep.
Thank you, mate. Thanks.
Happy days, Floyd. Unfortunately, I've just thought of one more. It's going to be the last one. Do you want to touch on intermittent fasting? Not necessarily even on a large scale, on a weekly scale or whatever, just even on a daily basis, or the benefits of it, how it can be used from day to day in terms of weight loss, things like that?
Yeah, so at the start, with the question about how to make your fat loss journey like successful or enjoyable, we said about having a nutrition strategy which is sustainable. Whether that's low carb, paleo, intermittent fasting, whatever it is, they kind of all work by doing the same thing, and that's creating a calorie deficit. So intermittent fasting isn't magic, but it is a useful tool to help create the calorie deficit. And there's a few different methods you can use. So there's the 5-2 diet, where you eat for 5 days, fast for 2 days. There's altered day fasting, where you eat one day, fast the next. And then the most popular one would be the 16-8 diet, where you kind of fast for 16 hours and then eat for 8 hours. But what you're essentially doing is making your eating window smaller. So for a lot of people, it'll be skipping breakfast. So if you skip breakfast, you're essentially reducing 500 calories there. And then you have your first meal at lunchtime, and then your last meal, let's say 8. So you're making your eating window pretty small. And for most people, it can be pretty difficult to go over their calories within that small eating window. So it can be a useful tool to create a calorie deficit, because a lot of people actually could do without eating in the morning for breakfast. So a lot of people can't skip it and function just fine, and they'd rather have more to eat at night time. So it can be a useful strategy for those.
And when it comes, obviously, just back on to, we're talking about this in the calorie banking question on training days, training early in the morning, no go.
Yeah, like being fasted.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you want to be doing something that's high intensity again. You want to be having some carbs in the system. Now, a lot of people may be training really early in the morning. They may not have time to eat. So what you can do is you can place an emphasis on the night before. So you can have a big dinner. Because basically when you eat carbs, it goes into the muscle, and that's where it's stored as fuel, and it stays there unless you contract your muscles and use it. But if you think about sleeping, you're not using your muscles. So when you get up the next day, you're still well fueled. Like Sean will know this, because the day before he fights, he carb loads, and the day before is the fuel he takes into that fight. So if anyone's not really hungry in the morning, they can think about having a bigger dinner the night before, and then go into the training session, and you're still going to have the fuel needed, and then maybe just top up in the morning with some carbohydrate source that's pretty small, like a banana, rice cakes, just whatever you can tolerate.
And Sean, were you going to ask something there?
So Floyd, see, what would you say the recommended sugar intake is for someone, obviously with someone trying to get in their protein, right? Like what comes with that? It can be a lot of sugars in terms of like shakes and like bar yogurts, like sugars are involved there. And what if someone's sort of worried about diabetes as well at the same time as trying to get their protein intake in, and what comes with them protein intakes is some sugars? How can they, what would be the recommended sugar intake roughly?
So see, when it comes to the sugar intake, and a lot of people think that too much sugar is a problem. It can cause obesity, it can result in things like diabetes and cardiovascular disease. But calories are always going to be the most important thing. See, if you're within your calories, they've actually done studies in this. So they've got two groups of people, put them on the exact same amount of calories. One group had a high sugar intake, the other group had a low sugar intake, and there was no differences in rate of weight loss, and there was no differences in health markers, because calories are the most important thing. Now, where sugar may become a problem is it's not very filling, so it's easy to overconsume. And if you're consuming too much sugar, you're not very full for long, and then you tend to overeat, and then as a result of that, you overeat on calories. That's when you can run into problems. So in terms of fat loss and health, it kept being in a calorie deficit. Calories are going to be the most important thing. Whether you make up the majority of your diet from sugar isn't going to be a big deal, but obviously I would advise against it, because it's not going to be very filling. So you're not going to be very satisfied on the diet. And there's a difference as well with sugars. There's natural sugars, which are found in yogurts and fruits. And then there's added sugars, which are added to foods, like your sweets, your chocolates and stuff. So there's kind of a difference between the two. But it's recommended when you're looking at the back of a food label, you see 100-gram values. It always gives you sugars. You do want your sugar intake roughly to be less than 5 grams for every 100 grams. So less than 5% of your overall calories, just to keep a close eye on it. But in short, if you do go over that, as long as you're within your calories, it's no big deal.
Happy days. Good, Mark.
Brilliant. Just before we go, I'll ask again, any questions you want to ask Floyd before we go? Nope. Sound.
Everyone's probably fucking sleeping.
Plenty to take away, everyone. So hopefully you have any notebooks by your sides and noting stuff down, and plenty of knowledge.
Great work,
thank you.
If you can all do me a favor, Sean and Guy, and most importantly Floyd, go on and give them a wee shout out on Instagram, and just a quick wee note about obviously what you've been listening to, or anything, the knowledge that you've took away, or just what you think of tonight's session. Tag them SF Performance Nutrition, and like I said, give them a shout out, because the knowledge there is absolutely exceptional. You won't get better than this, particularly on this island as well. So
as well as that, of course, me, Marty, Gary, even Orla, we're only qualified to advise on what to eat, whereas Floyd can tell us exactly what to eat. He's like he says, he's a master's in the sports nutrition. So if anyone feels they wanna, like they really wanna invest in themselves, and take that extra step with their training that they're getting from me, Marty, and Orla, and Gary at Missile Fitness, then just give Floyd a shout and inquire about that if you feel you want to invest yourselves.
Okay, 100%.
Thanks very much. That's
Floyd.
Just going to take a wee picture here for Instagram. Can you smile for me, please?
Get the biceps out. Guy, quick question. Are you on my Zoom?
Mama?
Hi, you're fucking way.
Here, that must be built into my laptop.
100%.
I can't remember when you bought
I'm usually erratic, Bill.
Right, well, listen, Lloyd, gentlemen.
Stage all tomorrow, everyone.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Cheers all tomorrow.
it. Yeah. Bye.
Right,